Hi, Beatrice,
Yes, hi, Sophie.
and welcome to the New World Lead. With this project, the New World Lead, I explore different takes on how we create the world we love to live in. And
Yes,
as I see it, we need love, we need freedom, we need abundance, and we need possibilities instead of fear and control and lack and limitations. Um, and I'm curious about the concept and the practice of abundance in this connection. And I know you are wealth and success coach for women in the health and wellness industry. Um, you hold a master's degree in international business communication, specialized in philosophical coaching, and you have workshops, circles, working with clients with your a spiritual take, but always scientifically based. So this is a super match to what I am working with and standing for, and that is the reason why I invited you to this conversation today. So
yes,
thank you for taking the time to hop on with me, and let's dive a little into who are you, Beatrice, and what is abundance to you?
yes. Oh my goodness. So, first of all, thank you for holding this space and for having these conversations and asking such a powerful and profound question to me. Um, because my intuitive and response, which of course it's like I have my background in philosophy, so my first take is to ask a question. So it's like, what is the world that I want to see? And so reflecting a little bit about that, figuring out when I ask myself that question, what are the sort of like string of thoughts? What are the feelings that come up? And as as seems obvious, for me, a wealthy experience, wealth comes up, joy comes up, love is the penetrator of all that. So as you said, this work that I do, it aligns with your mission and what you're doing as well, because that is what comes up when I ask myself that question. Um, then the meta sort of response that comes is that, you become the world that you want to see by becoming the world that you want to see. And this is not a mind trick question, it's a mind trick way of putting it. It's honestly just the way that I see it and that I experience it. Because if we and when we desire to move from a me consciousness, it's all about me, to a we consciousness where it's about us and the world, and we're here talking about the world that we want to see, not just the I that I want to see, right? So we're thinking and reflecting on a sort of on a me to we collective individual synergy way, right? um and I think where I'm getting at um is that in that process, in that synergy, in that energy exchange, it's like a process of looking at who am I, and always starting with what comes from within, and changing, defining, your desire, and 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 changing what's within, in order for you to see that world and to project that world, and to for that to be magnified out in your experience, right? So it's that constant play. That's sort of like the work that I'm doing, that we're doing, and that we're doing here as well, of looking at ourselves in order to see something different. So when it comes to abundance, it's so much fun because I get to have specialized in something that's called protreptic, and basically that is this ancient philosophical tool or it's a dialogue practice that that basically encourages the individual to examine oneself and to examine it, that individual's essence and its values, right? And to start managing one's life. And I think that's also actually a core theme that when we have this conversation of abundance and looking at ourselves and creating it inside out, that we first start with the concept of self-management and start with self-leadership and starts with, how am I managing my emotions? How am I managing my experience? Like what kinds of experience am I having? What am I thinking? What am I speaking? All of those things, like a heightened level of awareness, a hyper awareness, if you will, before we start thinking about how do I manage the collective? Because the collective is going to be a direct reflection of the self. So it starts with that concept of self and changing and looking at that and that self, and looking and examining, what do I actually believe abundance to be? What does abundance feels like?
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny because just coming back to the philosophical part and practice, a tool that we use in protreptic is etymology, which is basically the history of words and their meanings. And this is where communication and flows through that specialization in philosophical coaching, because of this practice of understanding what are the words that we're saying, what is that ancient meaning that they're carrying. And even though that meaning might have disappeared or it's obsolete or whatever it is, it's still part of sort of like the energetic imprint that we're carrying as we say these words, like as we say these sounds and air expressions, right? And think our thoughts. And abundance comes from a word called from the word abound. And abound has this Proto-Indo-European root. This is an ancient language that is believed to have been existing but never spoken. It's called Proto-Indo-European if you like want to geek out that stuff. But just to make it simple, this word is, or this, it's a root, and the root is wet. And this basically has the meaning of water. So it's so interesting when we're walking around and we're talking about and thinking about abundance. We might be aware, but maybe we're unaware of the deeper rooted meanings in those words. But when we can then, sometimes it's usable, okay? Sometimes it's not. I just want to be completely honest. Sometimes it's like, okay, this word has a meaning that, whatever. But in this sense, it does make sense to just stop for a while and ask ourselves that, okay, if abundance has a root in the concept of water, what does that mean? And what does that mean to me? What does that mean to the collective? What does that mean?
Wow, that's interesting.
I think I went on a soap opera for a while, but
yeah, but you know what? Recently, I had a conversation with a transformational coach about the power of emotions, and we had a long discussion about the drama triangle. When we play the roles of the victim or the savior or the rescuer and the violator, and staying in this drama game, and then going into the middle, becoming the queen or the king or the sovereign, transforming all these subordinates within us that play these games, or just step out of the game and play a new game of freedom, of creation, of coaching, of challenging instead. And she ended up saying, like, let's just drop the drama and become like water, because water is like going with the flow, just drop the drama. And it just dawned on me when you talked about the root of abundance being water, like this profound wisdom of, like, nature is abundant, growing effortlessly, blooming effortlessly, and we are nature, and we are abundant as in ourselves. If we become like water, if we water our essence, our nature, obviously we will bloom. So this is what that is what I got from you saying that the root of abundance is water. It makes so much sense to me.
Yes, and it's almost like I'm hearing you. I'm sort of like hearing you maybe indirectly speak sort of like the law of wealth, because the law of wealth says that there is one thing that, because you're using sort of the metaphor and the experience of watering something, and that's the exact way that in coaching as well, that we talk about the seeds that we plant, and we have to water and nurture those seeds, right? And we plant mental seeds, you know, and the law of wealth basically says that you need to sort of, there's something that you need to have in order for this law to work. Just like, you know, the law of gravity works when, you know, when you throw an apple up, it comes down, right? So the law of wealth says that in order that how should I say this? It says that you need to believe that you have everything required to experience wealth already within you. So it's that you need to believe that there's already a seed inside of you, and all you have to do is water it. And you said something just beautifully when you said we have to sort of become water. Yeah. But the funny thing about human beings is that when we become more aware of what we're actually made out of,
yes,
it's like 90, okay, I'm not a numbers girl, but it's like 90% of water. I want to feel like saying just 90% water. So it's like, oh, okay, I don't even have to become something. I don't even have to transform. I already am. And so that's the law of wealth, says that when you believe that you already have everything required to be wealthy, to experience wealth, to experience abundance, to be abundant, you already have the power already inside of you. You're guaranteed that for that to be your experience if you water the seed, right? So that just made me think of that in context of this sort of conversation, and also that there's so many ways to then water that seed. Like Plato, he says, or he at least expresses the core belief that thinking and speaking is of the same coin. It's two sides of the same coin, right? So that's why in protreptic and in philosophical coaching, we work with your inner dialogue and work as well with what you're saying, because so many of us are unaware of what it is that we're putting out, you know, and it's because of those subconscious beliefs that we just haven't grasped yet, right? But a way to, like, how you think and how you speak, it's like the water you pour on your abundant seed, if that makes sense.
It makes so much sense.
Yeah. Because that is determining how you're going to vibrate. Back to your conversation about emotions, right? So how we feel is how we vibrate in our bodies. And that is sort of like how we get to work with the embodiment of wealth and the embodiment of abundance by becoming very aware of what we're thinking, what we're speaking, how we're actually caring for that seed of abundance within us, right? Yeah, excuse me.
Okay. So, so to me, abundance or wealth is it's so much more than just money. Of course, money is a physical expression of wealth and abundance in some way, but I see it as a very a very encompassing concept of obviously health, joy, love, like every element of thriving as a human being or on this planet. How do you define it?
Yeah, I feel abundance is an experience, and it's a perspective and a choice. And because it's like, as you said, it's our natural condition. It's our natural condition. It's like, if you look at the ocean, there is like it's impossible for every human on earth to everybody go and take a Tupperware and just take a piece of ocean and for there to not be enough ocean. It's like,
back to the water.
I don't believe that's possible, but somebody needs to be like, okay, I'm going to challenge that. And I'm like, that's fair enough. But that is just my belief. That is just my belief. And it's like, it's just when we decide to see it, when we decide to see like, oh, this field of grass, there is nobody who said like, I'm like, there is a limited amount of grass straws, or there's just endless amounts of uncountable grass straws. And I think, I can't really remember at what age I was, but there was just this point in my life where like I've always been this very reflective, self-reflective kind of girl person, writing diaries since I could write. But at one point I was just gazing and sitting and looking, and I was looking through my eyelashes. And I was sitting in a specific way where the sun was just hitting my eyelashes in a way where I was looking through them, right? It was like, I know they're there, but I was looking through them, and in the experience of like they were disappearing in a way. But I could see sort of like the glitter of the different colors. I don't know if you've ever had that experience. You can sort of see that, right? And then at one moment, there was this fly who caught my attention. And I saw then in the wings of that fly was the exact same colors and ways of constructions that I had seen in my eyelashes in that way. And then I was like, whoa. I had that experience of a true just recognition of like, that fly and I were made out of the same matter. And I think when you sort of like start thinking of nature, and you start thinking and seeing like those not small, but those things where you start to see that it's like nature is everywhere, and just start to put your attention to the abundance just in nature, and how it is part of who you are. You can start to reflect upon like abundance as well, and wealth and money, and joy and happiness, as part of who you are, as something that you are made out of. If that makes sense.
Yeah. It's like unity consciousness. There is no separation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like and in that sense, it's energy, because we're all, in that sense, energy. So so to answer, I think your question is just like, to me, I see it as, yeah, as an energetic choice to align with that.
Yeah, an energetic choice,
Yeah,
because
and a conscious choice.
it's the choice. Because we can also choose to energetically experience, and that might not be a conscious choice, but it's still a choice to experience the opposite of abundance in this life as a human being on the planet. And what does that look like?
Oh my goodness, like if you ask me my personal experience, oh my goodness, it like, we can language it in many ways. We could be like, it looks like hell, and be like, oh, heaven and hell in that. But it's also just like, it looks like anxiety and stress and angst and depression and just mental holistic imbalance and disease. Anger and guilt and shame. It looks like trauma, you know? So I think anybody listening to this conversation can imagine that's hell to most people. That is not a like an experience that you want to continue being in, because it is destruction.
But still, so many people on our planet today are living under conditions of lack, in the lack mindset or mentality, and thus the experience of lack in their everyday living.
I see that as sometimes I see what shows up is that people don't think that they have a choice. So they live their lives as though they didn't have a choice. And there is no shade in anybody's game, because as I see it, it's like life is this game that we're choosing on a higher level to take part in. And I've always loved games, and I always love figuring out what are the rules of these games so I can win and have fun and celebrate and dance, and that's what I want to do. But in that sense, and it's not to just be like up on a high or anything on that state, but it's truly because I've been in when I have been in that place, I felt that I didn't have a choice. I felt hopeless. I felt like my life was happening to me. I felt that I was in the drama triangle, that and it's like being in the drama triangle and just simply being unaware of there being another reality for you to choose. So I think it's like part of this abundance game starts with awareness of its existence and what are the rules and how do I play it so that I can win and have fun.
So what are the rules, Beatrice? What are the rules of the abundance game?
Oh my God. I mean, how could I list them all by now? But there are several rules, and I think we can maybe talk about like some of the most important rules that I found. And I think it's like, it sort of begins with, I feel it begins with source. It begins with accepting and trusting that there's something beyond yourself. Like, you didn't make it on earth by yourself. Okay, like, and you're not, there's just something beyond. And I think like that is what I see with myself. I see it with just people around me, that makes everything just be more easy. And that aligns, I feel, as well with the energy of such a source, of the universe. And as well with our feminine qualities. for both men and women. And so like I feel like that's step number one. Then I feel as well accepting, because, and I think it might be part of that, but accepting that there's something beyond yourself and that you have a choice, and that choice is not, you know, that choice is, it's daily and it's momentarily, and it's at all times. I think it's part of the journey is really raising your awareness in terms of its understanding what is it that creates my reality. It's about going on those journeys where you journey out of this world, so you can distance yourself a bit from yourself and the world, the whole world, and you open up to see something else, something that can only be shown to you, if that makes sense. I think like that's truly a journey. I feel when I'm thinking with the end in mind, when I'm thinking of like, if like that's where you want to, you know, when you've gone through a journey of abundance or a journey of wealth lessons, and you feel like, when this journey has come to its completion and it's no longer and it has become part of me, what's my ultimate experience? And I feel like the ultimate experience is that deep connection with source, and that deep connection with what you need to know, and what you need is being shown to you and already is. And when you sort of embody that deeper level of belief, I feel that is how wealth and abundance shows up for you, in a sense. It's like, yeah. And then it's like, then there are all these small things of like, how do you get to there? And that's looking at, you know, as we talked about, how am I thinking? Who am I surrounding myself with? What are they thinking? What is my relationship with abundance and wealth and money? But as we talked about, it's also like, what are my relationships with people? Because that's part of your wealthy experience. What kinds of relationships do I have? How do I feel in those relationships? What do I contribute with? Sort of like starting to ask yourself those questions, and start seeing the abundance in those areas, I feel. Or sort of like some of the steps and some of the rules of the games that, you know, you have to be aware of your thinking, because it creates your reality. It's like,
it's super interesting how our thoughts create our reality, and becoming aware of thoughts that are blocking our path or our growth. And I have witnessed within myself, and also in my clients, these like limiting beliefs when we reach a certain level of creating, manifesting an abundant lifestyle and a wonderful experience. There can be old programming or thoughts coming up about basically shame and guilt or something like that. How can I, summing up like something like this, how can I enjoy this amazing experience of abundance, wealth, when there are other people on this planet suffering, going hungry to bed, and this feeling of unfairness, or I cannot be. I mean, like, if you are sad, I cannot be glad. Like, it's like a codependent, dysfunctional thought pattern, so to speak, which is super interesting. It was super interesting for me when I became conscious about it, and then still sometimes it comes up, and then I have to unravel and transform it again. Can you relate to that, or do you have other interesting interesting ideas about blocks or thoughts that that stands in the way of us enjoying abundance once we get to a place where we actually are surrounded by it?
Yes. Oh my goodness, there's so much I want to say. But it's such a, I love this that you're bringing this up, because it's such a, I think it's a very relatable experience for many. And also I think it's interesting because it's when we work with our minds and we work with our subconscious mind, and this is something as well learned through therapy. I'm not a therapist, but I do read this content and these art and discuss with my own therapist. But we produce what is familiar to us. So if guilt and shame is an emotional familiar experience, it will be produced. In coaching, I always say, like, how you do one thing is how you do everything. So you'll find a way to produce that in your reality. Like a quick fix to that thought, because I think it's so interesting when you say you have to go and unravel, and I see your body language, and I'm like, oh my God, that looks like so much effort.
Oh yes, let's do it easy.
Yeah, and I'm all about ease. Yeah.
Easy way. Yeah.
The easy way where it's like we do our work, we don't have to exude all that energy. We can spend our energy in luxuries and relaxing other things. So sort of like, I don't want to say the quick fix, because there is never a quick fix, but sometimes we're trapped in language, right? So I'll untrap myself. But a way to overcome that quickly or easily is to simply remember that we all create our own reality. We are all responsible for our own experience. And that is the energy and the thinking of the sovereign soul, of the, I love to call it the Empress, right? When we talk about in the feminine energy, right? But it's just to quickly remember that you are an Empress, and that you know and embody that you're the creator of the reality, and therefore you also know that anybody else like you, meaning another human being, also creates its own reality. And even though that's like, I'm just gonna pause, because this is gonna affect somebody. Somebody's gonna be like, ooh, that's done. It's like, that didn't feel good. No, I don't want to touch that. I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want to think that. No. So let's just hold space for that, because I understand why. I understand why that would be like, oh, that no, I can't think that, because I'm used to the guilt and shame. I'm reproducing the familiar. I'm staying in the loop. But if we're like, let me be open to that, and let me maybe in that process of acknowledging that this doesn't really feel good, I'm resisting it. What am I thinking about it? Become aware of those strings of thoughts that come from that feeling. And then come back to, okay, I'm open to think that I create my own reality. Okay, I can think that about myself. I can acknowledge that because I see that, I experience that to be true. And then we go back the same, it's like a mathematical, it's like, you can ask yourself, is the math? It's like every time you say 1 + 1, it always equals 2. There's like no way to make it equal 3. It's science. So you go back and you think, you teach yourself to think in a scientific way. And you say, okay, so anybody else like me? Is that the same for them? Yes or no? Yes. Okay. Then we're back at the truth again. And we can start feeling more into that truth. I'm not saying to me, it's easier than to feel like I have to exude a lot of energy and effort to unravel why am I thinking that? Is that making sense?
It's making sense in the to the point that it's a quantum physical fact that that we are the creators of our reality, and that whatever is going on in our world is the product of our conscious and unconscious thoughts, emotions, and behavior, and we can also go into the karmic lessons or whatever, but and it also makes sense that knowing this makes it quicker or easier to let go of this of these thought patterns or emotional patterns of shame and guilt, and then still and I guess that's because that depends on how deep it's based, how deep seated the trauma based thoughts and emotions are. Because what I realized at some point was that it was really that the thing I mentioned before about how can I be glad if you're sad? That's a trauma. That's a trauma-induced programming or thought, emotional programming coming out of my childhood wound. That is the basic trauma string, so to speak. And knowing this still doesn't make it go away. I realized that for every level of growth and development, yes, in my personal life, in my business, in my relationships, in for every new level, for every glass ceiling I break through, first this comes up again. It's like I have to face it for every level, and that made me curious. Is that just how it is because of these this deep-seated trauma, or can we grow out of this at some point? What is your experience?
I would ask you a question, mm-hmm, and I would ask you, would it be possible that you have made an agreement with source, with what's beyond, with yourself, mm-hmm, that every time you make a move in your life, mm-hmm, you have to pay, you have to suffer, or you have to have this experience to prove yourself, or there has to be something so you have that experience? Could it be an agreement that you have made? That now I'm actually putting the, I would really ideally ask you an open question. But cat's out the bag. That would be what I would be wondering, whether that's what's happening in your reality.
Yeah, that I made an agreement on the level of source, or like
yeah, and from your childhood experience, that is like every time I try to get something that's good for me, or something that I want, or something that I love, is that child, I'm being punished, or in that's the experience, right? So how does that, so it's like, then we get to look at, okay, that's an agreement that that child made in an age, because it was the wise thing to do to survive. And then it's like looking at, okay, well, now when we're older and wiser and all this stuff, and we get to see, it's funny, there's this experience repeating over and over and over again. How come? Could it be that I've made an agreement at one point that whenever I go ahead and do certain certain stuff, and it shows up in this way? And I think that's how childhood trauma, that's like the number one thing standing in the way, blocking our abundance, is trauma. It's like a lot of times, it's like you feel you're doing everything. You feel you're like, you're visualizing, you're praying, you're doing all this stuff, and you're earning, you're seeing things, but at a deeper level, you don't feel that you deserve it. At a deeper level, there's still an expression of those unhealed traumatic wounds and experiences. And so they keep, in psychology, they say gestalting.
they say what? Sorry.
Gestalting. It's like, it's a gestalt.
Right.
They keep ghosting. They come up as a ghost experience, because they're still part of your energetic imprint. And your sort of like energetic thinking and your conscious thinking. So that would be my way to sort of look at that specifically. Is it something that happens to many? Maybe, probably. I think a lot of us make a lot of agreements that we're unaware of, a lot of assumptions, assuming that, this is not for me, or every time I do this happens. We create our own mini laws in our own worlds, and those laws affect our experiences, and affect our abundance and our wealth, and we're not aware of it. And when you ask to like what I have seen in my own experience, and in clients' experience, and just people around me, is like the number one, traumas is a huge part of what is standing in the way. But I feel like on a level of consciousness, is this consciousness of loss and lack. And I think sometimes we are aware about lack. It's like, yeah, I don't have, or like, but I think we it's like putting our attention a little bit more into the feeling of loss, and seeing the small, like the distinctions in those two, and actually seeing, okay, well, this I think just what a lot of us just moving from this panorama thing that we all experienced in 2020. And I think just when we reflect about like, how do we sort of, how is a lost consciousness showing up, is, in our reality? Because a lot of us, I think, are subconsciously producing more loss, or creating from a loss consciousness without thinking about it. And that is the direct opposite of an abundant and wealth consciousness. It's like saying I want love, but acting from fear. It's the same thing, right? Saying, being engaged in sentences and words like I don't, I can't, I mustn't, or I should or shouldn't, or I didn't, like some those experiences I didn't have. I for a long time I was in myself. I was saying, I was referring to like 5 years of traumatic, you could say, stalking of trauma playing out in my life. And I was referring to it as a loss of time.
Yeah.
And when I became aware of that, I was like, oh my goodness, in that reliving of that experience, I'm creating from a place of loss and loss of time. And when I became conscious about it, I could see everywhere I was thinking, oh my God, I don't have time. I don't have time for this. I can't, there's not enough time. And I think it's sometimes we look at abundance from a financial and a money, but it's like it's abundance in all things that we use and trade. Like it's time, it's our energy, it's sort of like, yeah.
Yeah, and time is so much more precious than money or anything else, like time and energy, because I mean, like all the other resources are infinite, but time actually, I mean, like this lifetime, we only have a certain amount of time. So having being able to expand the experience of time and energy to create an abundance, a feeling of abundance of time and energy must be the most precious life experience of all.
That's so much amazingness that you say that, because it's like,
Thank you.
like yes, and there's ways that we do that with with tools and practices and techniques.
Yeah.
And there's ways that we do that with nature as well.
Yes.
And that's actually part of a passion of mine that I have been working with psychedelics and with psilocybin specifically, as a
Okay.
way to work with nature and open up your subconscious and your visionary experience to exactly that, expand your wealth consciousness and expand your consciousness of love, because that is what is being expressed through that human and fungi synergy. Excuse me. So that just got me excited, because that is part of what you as well mentioned in the beginning, the enriched Empress Circle, because what journeying with psilocybin specifically does is a healing. It embarks you on another level healing experience. And there is just that beautiful, beautiful space of, or experience. I keep saying experience, but I feel it's like when it all comes down to that, of doing that in a circle of women and in a circle of curated women. So it's all in a circle of women who are aligning with the energy of the Empress and the energy of wealth and abundance. And yeah, that just got me, of course, like that just got me hooked up to that energy, because of that.
But I mean, like you're working on the enriched Empress Circle, creating the space for a launch in the near future. But you actually have a workshop coming up this August in Hellerup in Denmark, which is a live workshop series. I think it's like 3 times meeting up, and you're calling it the wealthy wise woman.
Yeah.
Tell me a little about that.
Yes. So, oh my goodness. Goodness grace. That is like the formula that I feel that, from studying with my own mentors, from observing my own life and working with clients, and that is just the blueprint, or the, like I like to call it, like a recipe or the formula for being and becoming a wealthy wise woman, and moving with that energy. Because as we talked about in our conversation as well, everything is energy. And so the Wealthy Wise Woman is sort of like this practical way of working energetically as well. So we work with the practices and different techniques that as well we talked about here. And we work with it specifically in alignment with abundance and wealth. Yeah. So that is that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to put a link up for a description and a link to you for people to get in touch with you, and other things like show notes here, so people can find you and learn more about your offerings and your awesomeness in this world. It has been such a great honor meeting you, connecting and aligning with you. And I want to sum up our conversation by asking you once again, how do we create the world we love to live in?
By becoming the world that we love to live in.
Thank you, Beatrice.
You're welcome.
Do you have anything else you want to add, or do you feel complete?
We're all abundant.
Mm-hmm.
And this earth is all abundant. And we're all meant to be here. And our time is now.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with me, to delve into to abundance, and I can't wait to meet you again. Thank you so much. See you.
Thank you.